Hello, I'm Kirsty Young. Thank you for downloading this podcast of Desert Island Discs from BBC Radio 4. For rights reasons, the music choices are shorter than in the radio broadcast. For more information about the programme, please visit bbc.co.uk/radio4. My castaway this week is Martin Sheen. He has jokingly referred to himself as the acting president of the United States, as in recent years he has won great acclaim and a Golden Globe for playing the leader of the free world in TV's hugely successful political drama, The West Wing. He's no slouch either when it comes to the big screen. Apocalypse Now, Gandhi, Badlands and The Departed are among the 100 or so movies he's appeared in. Work for him is often a family affair. In Wall Street he acted alongside his son, Charlie Sheen, and in his latest movie, The Way, another of his children, Emilio Estevez, is his director and co-star. Off-set, he is a committed social activist and campaigner. He's been arrested around 70 times. He says, film is an illusion, fame is ephemeral. Faith and family are what endure. Martin Sheen, that quote interested me particularly, I think, because most film actors think that they are leaving some sort of enduring legacy through their movies. You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. No, I was once asked, what would I like to be remembered for? And I said, for about 5 minutes.
And what about being remembered for being the president? I mean, that was 7 years. It was one of those programs, The West Wing, that seared itself into people's consciousness. Do people still sort of greet you with a kind of slightly want to maybe salute the commander-in-chief or shake his hand or something?
Well, we had an awful lot of interest in the show and a lot of fans over the years, and we've all remained friends and adored each other. But we were the kind of the parallel White House at the time, because when we began the show in 1999, the Democrats were in the White House with Mr. Clinton, and then the Bush administration came in 2001.
And am I right in thinking that Bill Clinton, as you say, he was holding the presidency when you first started
when
shooting
we started,
this?
yeah. Uh-huh.
Did he give you access to the White House?
He did, yeah. No, he loved the show.
Did he?
Oh, God, yeah. He loved it, and he would ask for videos, and sometimes he would run them on Air Force One when he was traveling. He was a huge fan of the show.
Did he ever give you any tips? Did he ever say that?
He came to visit us on the set after he left the Oval Office, and he began to tell me that, well, you know, Martin, that thing over there, maybe you should move that on this side. This chair over here looks better in the corner. This right. Well, you can leave it the way it is. Fine, you know. He was great. He was so funny, and there was something about him that was just so vulnerable, so human. And what was fascinating is he wanted to listen to you. You know, when you get around very famous people, particularly on that level, you want to talk fast and you don't want to bother them, you know, because they're busy and they got a lot of things on their mind and a big agenda. But he would sit there and talk to you, you know.
Fascinating. Yeah. So much to talk about. But first of all, Martin Sheen, tell me about your first piece of music today. What are we going to hear?
You're going to hear Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues.
And why have you chosen this?
Well, I love the song anyway, but in 1989, I directed a film, the only film I've ever directed, called Cadence. Mind you, it was a very low-budget independent film. Here in England, I think it was called Stockade, incidentally. And it starred my son, Charlie, and I edited it literally in our back room garage.
Yeah.
And we were creating a montage. And I looked at the montage, and it was just terrific, and we were trying all kinds of music. And the one song that fit the montage the best was Subterranean Homesick Blues. And now we had to get permission for the song. And I went over to see my neighbor, who had written the song and recorded it in 1964. I invited him over a few days later, and he came and in the backyard, and he watched this sequence, and he said, yeah, I think that would be great. And so that's how it came about.
John is in the basement mixing up the medicine. I'm on the pavement thinking about the government. The man in a trench coat, badge out, laid off, says he's got a bad cough, wants to get it paid off. Look out, kid, it's something you did. God knows when, but you're doing it again. You better duck down the alleyway looking for a new friend. The man in a coonskin cap in a pig pen wants $11 bills. You only got 10.
That was Bob Dylan, your neighbour, Martin Sheen, and Subterranean Homesick Blues. What about working with your family? Because a lot of us enjoy, one of the aspects we enjoy most about our work is that it's time to get away from the family. It's our thing. We're not surrounded by our kids and our wives and all that sort of stuff. I mean,
no, that's the most fun. Is it? Oh, God, yes. You know, this most recent film, The Way, which is about the pilgrimage of Santiago de Compostela, was written by my son, Emilio. He directed it. And he starred with it in me. It's a father-son story. So it does not get any better than this, you know, on any level.
I'm wondering, when you were working on it, being directed by your son, is that an easy process? Is it difficult?
For me it is, yeah.
Is it?
I adore him. You know, I was once interviewed, a reporter said, well, tell us about your son, Emilio. I said, oh, Emilio, I have known him all of my life. And the guy said, no, you mean you've known him all of his life? I said, no. When he arrived, I was 21, and I thought, oh, he's the guy I've been waiting for. Oh, I know who he is. All right, fine. I just thought of him as a companion, as a big brother, really. And that's the way our relationship has been all our lives.
I need to talk just a little bit more about the West Wing. It's not the only thing we're going to talk about, but of course you have these legions of fans around the world who all feel rather sad that president is not in the Oval Office anymore.
Oh, we have a far better one in reality now. Well, thank God.
You yourself, I mean, you are a social justice campaigner. Am I right? You've been arrested more than 70 times? Okay.
No, not quite. I think it's 67. I usually keep up with my
and
age,
counting.
So I have a little work to do.
But you're somebody who obviously is interested in the way that the world turns and the way that it functions. Given that, you know, political office has been held by people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and so on, people must have tried to get you involved in politics with a big P. Said stand for our party.
The Democratic Party at one point, when I was still doing the show, made an inquiry if I would be interested in running for the Senate from my home state.
Right.
I grew up in Ohio. Yeah. And, you know, I'm deeply flattered, but I'm not qualified. And I had to make that very clear. I personally could never stand for public office because then I would be responsible to a constituency and not my conscience. You know, there's a big difference between celebrity and credibility.
But then you do stand on platforms, you do make speeches, you do write articles in the LA Times espousing your own point of view, and you obviously feel that it's worthwhile for people to listen to it. So there must be a part of you that thinks that you are worth listening to. You're not just an individual voter casting their vote.
It's true, but I really don't anticipate ever influencing anyone to do anything, frankly. All of my social justice activism has been for myself. I do it for myself. And you do it because you cannot not do it and be yourself.
Let's have some more music then, Martin Sheen. What are we going to hear now?
You're going to hear How Can I Keep From Singing? It is my favorite hymn. It has been a great source of inspiration for me in particularly very dark times. It is a reaffirmation of the cherished belief I have in faith. This hymn speaks to that in a deeply personal way. It's like in the worst of times, there is still so much to give thanks and praise for. Now, no matter what the circumstances, I say thanks. It's been wonderful. I couldn't have asked for anything more.
My life goes on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real though far off hymn that tells a new creation.
That was Enya and How Can I Keep From Singing? So I introduced you as Martin Sheen, but that's not the name on your passport, is it? What's on your passport, Martin Sheen?
Ramon Gerard Estevez.
Which sort of says it all, because you come from Spanish-Irish stock. Your parents were immigrants.
My dad was born on July 2nd, 1898, which is the very day that the United States declared war on Spain.
Right. Unfortunate timing, to say the least.
Very unfortunate. He left with his brother Alfonso for the New World. He was 16 years old.
Right.
And he met my mother, who had come from Ireland. They were married in 1927 in Ohio, and they had 12 pregnancies. 10 survived, 9 boys, 1 girl. And I was the 7th son.
And so, as you say, there were a big family. What was the household like? I'm imagining,
Very
apart from
busy,
being jam-packed.
very noisy.
Yeah, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, there was a phrase that said a lot about our house growing up. Is first up, best dressed.
Okay.
There was a clothes bin there.
Okay. And meal times? I mean, well, I'm imagining money was relatively tight.
Extremely tight. Yeah,
Right, okay.
Yeah. And yet there wasn't this great concern about it. I mean, we never felt the want for anything. We always were housed. And there was always enough food.
Right. What did your parents want for you? What were their ambitions for all these children?
My mother died when I was young. I was almost 11 when she died in 1951. So my dad basically raised us, But all my brothers in front of me had become caddies at a very young age at this private golf course in Dayton. And when I was 9 years old, I was expected to join the caddy brigade, and I did.
And it made quite an impression on you.
Yes, very much so, yeah. I fell in love with golf. I learned how to play. I was pretty good as a teenager. I play at public courses because I'm just not comfortable belonging to anything private. I keep the sticks in the car, and you just have to be patient.
And you won't be a member of a private club. Why?
Because it's something exclusive. It's that sense of privilege,
Okay, entitlement.
Entitlement
Okay.
and privilege that I resented deeply. I remember when there's a particular golf course I pass almost every day in Los Angeles. I read the brochure and how much it cost to join and the dues every year.
What did
and
it cost? Do you remember?
It was about $270,000 to join, and
Yeah.
it was about $25,000 a year for membership, And I thought, my God, I mean, all that money just to play golf.
Then, what's your relationship with the industry you're in? I mean, do you feel do you give a proportion of your income away? Do you feel uncomfortable with the amount that you earn in the movies?
Well, I don't earn that much anymore. I mean, when I was younger, yeah, I did very well. But no, I don't make that many films anymore, and the ones that I do are not, they're not box office hits,
But you're not uneasy with your wealth. Is it fine?
No, I don't really
right.
have that much wealth, frankly. We did give most of it away, honestly, we did. With family, with friends, trying to help people's dreams come true in the family, Sure, why not? What's the point in having it,
Let's have some music then.
Okay.
What are we going to hear
Who's
now,
up
Martin
now?
Sheen? We are on our third disc of the day. What is it?
Any Mozart, for me, it has a speed and a rhythm of its own. If I'm driving, and I listen to a classical station most of the time in Los Angeles, and I do a lot of driving, when Mozart comes on, I'll pass my destination rather than stop and shut it off. I cannot bear to stop Mozart.
Daniel Barenboim playing part of the second movement of Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 21 in C major with the English Chamber Orchestra. So, Martin Sheen, were you 5 or 6 when you realised that you wanted to be an actor? Can that be true? I mean, I read it. I'm not sure I believe it.
Yeah, I started going to the movies. I guess I was around 5 or 6. And I knew that this is what I was going to do. And I knew that if I didn't do it, even as a child I knew this, I would never be happy.
And does it make you happy? Do you
God, yes,
right.
Absolutely. It still does. And I'm 70 now, and it's worse now than it ever was.
And what did your father say when you told him you wanted to be an actor?
He was not a happy man.
No.
He had put a few dollars aside each week for me to go to college. And I was determined to go to New York and give the theater a try. And so it became a very difficult and a bitter dispute between us, you know.
And given that your mother had passed away by that time, as you said, you were 11. I read that you said once, it was a very moving description. You said the wind just left our sails as a family.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
absence, yeah.
What do you remember of that? What actually happened?
She had a cerebral hemorrhage.
So a very sudden death.
Very sudden.
Right. Okay.
She was a very lively lady. You know, she loved to sing and chat. She was a deeply spiritual person, and there was a great deal of joy and energy in her, you know. And then suddenly it was gone.
And what about your father then? I mean, she was the kind of keystone of the family.
Oh yeah, they were, you know, they adored each other and they really depended on each other. And suddenly the prop came out from the tent and the tent collapsed and he was broken. And, you know, he went into a deep depression and he didn't share any of it. You almost didn't want to bother him. Right. He just went deep inside himself. And it was years before he came out.
And did he live to see your success? Did he live to see you make a living as an actor and be on stage?
Oh, yeah, he did, yeah. He came to New York on his way to Spain. He was going to go home and live out the remaining years back home.
Right.
And I was on Broadway in a play called The Subject Was Roses, and it was an enormous hit.
Yes.
And it was a play about family, and particularly about fathers and sons. And he came to see it. And I played that night for him, and I never played better in my life before or since.
When he came backstage at the end of the performance...
He didn't come back.
He didn't come.
No, I waited for him.
He didn't come
back. I didn't know what happened. I was waiting for him, you know. I called home, and they had just arrived. They just took a cab and went home. He never, ever said a word about the performance, the play, anything. And that was in the summer of 1964. In the spring of 1969... I was working in Italy. I had Emilio and Ramon with me, and I had a week off, and we went to Spain, found the house, and visited the family, and it's the house that he grew up in. Right. I didn't realize it till the next morning, but Emilio and I and Ramon slept in the bed he was born in, and when we got up in the morning, there was a poster on the wall of the play that I had done. Unbeknownst to me, he'd taken the poster home and displayed it. In the last scene, if anyone knows that play, the son tells the father he loves him.
Time for some Vivaldi, I think. That's what we're going to hear next. Tell me why you've chosen the Vivaldi.
Well, I never listened to classical music when I was a boy. My wife, Janet, who was a musician in high school, introduced me to classical music, and this was one of her favorites, so it always reminded me of her.
Pinchas Sucherman playing part of Spring from the Four Seasons by Vivaldi with the English Chamber Orchestra. So let's cut Martin Sheen, movie-like, to your mid-30s, and you get the part of Captain Benjamin Willard in Apocalypse Now, an incredible part and one that's gone down in movie history as being a golden one. You were being directed by Francis Ford Coppola. You were working with Marlon Brando, who I imagine for any young actor is a hero. Was he a hero of yours?
Yes, he was.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so.
How was that to work with him?
I adored him. You know, he was so disarming and so genuine.
And legendarily, it was a real horror to film. I mean, it didn't go smoothly.
No, smoothly would not be the word.
No, no. What would be your word?
Slowly.
Right. Okay.
It was a long and arduous journey, not the least of which was some bad weather. You know, we got hit with a couple of severe storms, one which knocked out the sets, you know, and sent us packing.
And when did you suffer your heart attack?
That would have been March 5th, 1977.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a date you're going to forget.
Not likely, no.
Okay. I mean, did it come completely out of the blue?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was alone.
Were you?
Yeah, I was alone. Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
Jan and I were renting a little cottage up on a volcanic lake in the Philippines. And we used to go on weekends to Manila to make phone calls home. There were no cell phones in those days. But this particular weekend, it was hard to get a hotel room. So Janet went Friday night, because I had to work Saturday morning, and got us a room and was waiting for me. And, of course, I never showed up because I'd had a heart attack in the meantime. It came on a very early Saturday morning, and I was isolated, so I had to get to the road somehow. I don't know quite how I crawled, actually. I thought it was the end.
Did you? You thought?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
right.
yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, this is what it's like to die. And I remember specifically thinking, I said, well, it's not so bad, because at that point the pain had stopped, and I was resigned to it, and there was no fear. I remember that very, very specifically, and I remember going, moving, and then I realized if I continued, I would not get back, and I had to very consciously stop this journey and get back because I had too much responsibility. I had children, little children, and Janet, and it would be too much of a burden. So I began to literally will and bring myself back. I remember reaching down and pulling the grass and eating the grass, anything that was, that would ground me again. Yes, anything that would connect me, and determined to stay alive. And the more I got back into living consciousness, the worse the pain became again, because, boy, when I came back, the pain was excruciating. Anyone who has had a heart attack will tell you that.
And when you got to see the doctors in Manila and you were monitored and all the tests were done, what did the doctors tell you? When
I finally got to the hospital, they were able to reach Janet, and she met me at Makati Medical Center, and they were terrific there. They really pulled it together for me. And she whispered in my ear, "It's only a movie, babe."
Yeah.
And I started getting well right away. Yeah, it actually happened.
Were you working too hard or were you playing too hard? What was it?
Well, I think I think that psychologically I gave myself that problem to stop the madness in my life. That began a journey of inward proportion, I mean, I really was determined to try to find out what all this great mystery was all about. And so from 1977 until 1981, I was on this quest, and it culminated in Paris in 1981. I was doing a film in Paris, and I ran into an old dear friend, Terrence Malick, whom I hadn't seen for a while. I was in his first movie, Badlands, and he's a very devout man himself. Finally, he gave me the one book that really was the final step that I needed to take, and it was the Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. And at that time, there was a national election going on in France, and François Mitterrand won the election, and this was his theme, Ode to Joy. And all of Paris, all of France was playing this everywhere you went. And this was at the same time that I was on the final step of a very important decision, and that decision culminated in Paris on May 1st, 1981, where I rejoined the Catholic faith.
That was the Netherlands Radio Chorus singing Ode to Joy from Beethoven's Symphony No. 9 in D minor with the Concertgebouw Orchestra conducted by Bernard Haitink. You've said, Martin Sheen, in the past that your faith has to cost you something, otherwise you have to question its value.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. That's a very interesting thought.
Yeah, well, from that day, May 1st, 1981, till the present, really, I've been a practicing Catholic, and those 25 years have been by far the most difficult and equally the happiest of my life. I became really fully involved in the social justice issues. It included homelessness and human rights and women's rights and gay rights. And I began to risk, I'd be arrested very often.
So how did it change your day-to-day existence? What did you stop doing and what did you start doing?
Well, I stopped drinking, for one. I became a pacifist. And
had you been a very committed drinker?
Oh yeah, I'm in the program. Right. I've been for since the mid '80s. Really, I've been a member of AA, and it's been a lifeline.
I appreciate that this struggle is not yours, but of course you will know that you have these sons who've been very successful. One of whom is Charlie Sheen, and he himself is having struggles with addiction.
Yes, he is, yeah.
Given how deeply you understand those struggles, that must touch you very profoundly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Charlie is dealing with the most profound problems and addiction. It's no secret. His behavior has been an example of that. So if he had cancer, how would we deal with him? Well, he has another disease, and it's equally as dangerous as cancer. And so we lift him up. We pray for him and be present to him and try to lead him as much as we can. But, he's an adult and he needs a lot of help on a lot of different levels. He's been out there on his own for a very long time. And as a family, you never get used to it. It's a roller coaster ride, and it's been going on for some time. So we deal with it, every day.
Remarkably for the industry you live and work in, you will celebrate your 50th wedding anniversary this December.
Yeah, December 23rd, yeah. We actually been together since we met in December 1960. And we married a year later in 61. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so first of all, I do want to know the secret to a happy marriage. But before that...
You'd have to ask Janet.
Yeah, because your wife of so many years has been on quite a journey with you and your family.
She's the most remarkable human being I've ever known. And I don't have a clue who she is. It's true. I mean, I don't. I mean, she's just extraordinary. She's like a teacher, a friend, companion, a lover, a wife, of course, a mother, all of these things. But she's very much this individual. And she has a great, great sense of humor. I adore her. But honestly, I don't have a clue who she is. And I asked her once, not too long ago, I said, would you marry me today? Knowing what you know. She says, are you kidding?
That's a very silly question to ask, isn't it? You had it coming. You had that answer coming. So, Martin Sheen, what would you like to hear next?
Are we going to hear How Great Thou Art? Speaking about Janet?
Seems appropriate.
That's how I feel about her. This, again, is one of my favorite hymns. And this is a real choral hymn. I love to sing this hymn, and I love to hear it sung with a congregation, or a choir, and that's what we have in this case. So this is a powerful, powerful hymn.
That was the London Emmanuel Choir singing How Great Thou Art, and you couldn't hear it at home, but Martin Sheen was singing along too. You did. Fine voice you were in there, Martin Sheen. Let's talk a little bit about how you seem to have... I can't imagine it's been effortlessly woven together, your family life and your working life, by working with your children, by bringing them on set, by having them around. Has that been a very deliberate thing that you've done in order to try to keep the show on the road? Yeah,
very much so. And, you know, it had its detraction as well, because they gave up a lot of school and spent a lot of time on the road. But on the other hand, they were exposed to particularly third world countries that they normally never would have seen.
Am I right in saying that they're all actors now?
Yes, they are.
They all make their living at acting?
No, they don't all quite make their livings at it. Renee, my daughter, was Mrs. Landingham's assistant on The West Wing.
Right.
Renee is also a professional chef. She went to chef school and she met her husband there. He's a professional chef as well. So they work a lot together.
I'm wondering also if your beliefs, you know, as we've said, arrested 67 times, has giving voice to those feelings ever brought you in conflict with the Hollywood establishment? I mean, it is a notably conservative establishment.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have they said? Button it? Be
Well,
quiet?
yeah, a number of times, of course, you know. Particularly in some of the more controversial subjects that I was not welcome in certain company. And that's okay.
And how was that made clear to you? Was it just, you know, how does that work? Do you hear it through the grapevine, or do you get a call from a studio head? Or?
No, I wouldn't even know who the studio head was, frankly, you know. But yeah, I would get word, particularly through my agent or other members of the family. You know, like Charlie and Emilio had, you know, they started very young, and they were really doing some very big films and hanging out in some, you know, pretty hoity-toity company.
Indeed.
And so, yeah, they would tell me certain things, you know, hey, hadn't you better be careful of this and that, you know. I was already in my 40s, you know, to begin with. So the risk was limited in reality. I had a feeling that there were as many people that supported what I did that objected to it. So I think it all evens out. And if it didn't, I could care less, you know. Nothing I can do about it now anyway.
Ain't that the truth? Let's have some more music then. You're on disc 7, Martin.
Well, this is just one of my personal all-time favorites. It's that neighbor of mine again.
Oh, yeah.
Dear friend Matt Clark was doing a film called Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid with Chris Christopherson. And Chris asked Bob Dylan to do the music on the film, which he did. Sam Peckinpah was the director, and he didn't have a clue who Bob Dylan was. You know, and this was at the height of Dylan's career and popularity. And Dylan, I'm told, was watching this scene, and he went home that night and came back the next day with this song.
Mama, take this badge off of me. I can't use it anymore. It's getting dark, too dark to see. I feel I'm knocking on heaven's door.
That was Bob Dylan and Knocking on Heaven's Door. I'm wondering what your mother would have made of this extraordinary life and glittering career that you've had, Martin Sheen. As you said, you know, the wind was taken out of your sails, and then in the 80s you got it right back. What would she think?
Well, you know, I've always felt her presence, you know. I've never, ever felt vacant of her company. I've always felt she was present to me.
And was that something that happened more strongly in the 80s when you came back to your Catholic faith and you began to...
I think she had a lot to do with it.
Do you?
Oh, yeah, you know, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Do you ever talk directly to her? Do you ever have conversations with her?
I do, actually, and sometimes I see her in other people. It's fleeting, mind you.
And so I hope you know, Martin, that on Desert Island Discs, I cast you away onto an island. How will you, a man who's been surrounded by fame and family and a good wife, how on earth will you survive?
Oh, you know, I don't have a clue. But
No.
I the older I get, the more I enjoy solitude.
Right.
I don't get lonely when I'm alone. I don't spend nearly enough time alone. I love to read and listen to classical music.
Well, you're going to be very happy on the island then. Tell me about your final piece of music then. Disc number 8 is what?
Well, it's one of the great pieces of music ever written. It's Pachelbel's Canon. it's hard to listen to this without touching something deeply personal and wanting to go there. If you wanted to begin a meditation, if you wanted a stillness, this would be a wonderful piece of classical music to begin by.
That was the Berlin Philharmonic playing part of Pachelbel's canon conducted by Herbert von Karajan. So I am going to give you, Martin Sheen, the Bible and the complete works of Shakespeare to take with you to the island.
Okay.
And you're allowed to take a book of your own. What book is it going to be?
The Brothers Karamazov.
Ah, right.
Dostoevsky.
Right, you mentioned it earlier. I will give you a copy of that. And you're allowed a luxury.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would want a golf club and a bag of golf balls.
Oh, that's fine. You can have that.
It would either be a sand wedge or a 9-iron because I would imagine a desert island would have a lot of sand, so probably a pitching wedge would be better.
I could actually give you a full set of clubs, I think, if you'd like that.
I could probably end up building a nice layout. Yeah, okay, give me a full set.
Okay.
Fine.
Have to be a public course, of course, that you build. You can't
well, the whole island is public.
And if you had to choose just one of the 8 pieces of music, which one would you choose to save?
Knocking on Heaven's Door.
Okay, it's yours. Martin Sheen, thank you very much for letting us hear your Desert Island Discs.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed every hour of it.
You've been listening to a download from the BBC. You'll find more information on the Radio 4 website, bbc.co.uk/Radio 4.